30-second history lesson. In the old days, every agency had, and so let's say, for example, you were for example, you were an analyst working at, you were working in the Navy, and, you know, the Navy has different branches. At sea takes care of all the ships, air takes care of all the airplanes, facilities, the depots, etc. Supply. Okay, so let's say, for example, you worked for NAVSEA, and your boss said to you, I need you to start tracking everybody's leave. And, you know, like another duty is assigned. So you're responsible for coming up with tracking everybody's leave. And your way of doing that is to come up with an Excel spreadsheet or something on your laptop to be able to track everybody's leave. And over time, that becomes a more and more cumbersome process because now you're keeping track of family medical leave and workers' compensation and all these disability type things, and it becomes bigger and bigger. And so now you hire a contractor to come in and manage, you know, to put together the functional requirements for what, because this system keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so you're located in San Diego and you're doing this. But guess what? Probably somebody else in NAVSEA may be located in Norfolk, has to do the exact same thing. So now you have somebody over in Norfolk, and they're developing the system, and guess what? Theirs keeps getting bigger and bigger. So what was happening was the government was becoming very siloed. And not only was it happening in NAVSEA, but does any of these other agencies, do they need to keep track of people's time? Of course they do, right? And then, you know, we're talking about the Navy. Does anybody in the Army have to keep track of it? Of course they do. And let's talk about the civilian agencies. Does the Department of Justice have to keep track of that stuff? Of course they do. So what was happening was everybody was developing, when IT first started, everybody was developing their own little systems. And everybody was, and across, beyond IT, everybody was coming up with their specific requirements. And guess what? I'm special, I'm unique, I'm different than all my other government agency counterparts, and I want to justify my system, because guess what? As this thing keeps getting bigger and bigger, my level of importance in the organization keeps getting bigger and bigger. So people were getting this very territorial, let me grow my empire attitude about the jobs they had. And I'm talking about one specific example of timekeeping, but you can multiply this out across expense reporting. You can take it out to every function the government provides. Because every agency had this very, not even an agency, every like base, every office of Department of Justice, everybody had their own way of doing things. And I don't know if you've ever been involved when you have this system and you're trying to merge it with this system. The requirements are different, the way the data is put in is different, it becomes a real nightmare. So the problem was everybody had this very myopic view, we called it silo. Everybody was thinking just about themselves and their agency and their requirements, and they were thinking their requirements were so much different than everybody else. So the government really had to break that paradigm thought process. Because when you do it like this, what happens? What happens with this kind of scenario?
Got these different kinds of programs, and none of them intermingle with the other.
Which means you can't collect data at a higher level, good. And it's a mess. Why is it a mess?
Well, it's just a mess, and there's no system in place, and especially for the sake of consistency across different departments, even a job transfer, etc., makes it a little more difficult.
Put your taxpayer hat on. How do you feel about this?
It's a mess. It's a waste of money. Yeah.
Exactly. So our hard-earned dollars are going to support this crazy infrastructure across all the different agencies. So that paradigm had to break. So what the government said was, instead of, you know, let's try to come up with standard systems across the entire government to be able to get them out of the silo notion. And instead of coming up with every agency trying to run all their own procurements for a lot of the same things. Because, so there's two different initiatives going on here. One is this issue of, let's have one system that everybody can use so that you can roll up the data and find out how much it costs the government as a whole. The second initiative that was going on at the same time is if my agency needs these pens, what are the chances your agency needs these pens, right? So the way it was done back here is if I was in San Diego working for NAVC of the Navy, I would run my own little procurement for these pens. And you would be in Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., and you would be running your own procurement for these pens. So not only did you have this first issue of all these separate siloed systems, you also had the problem that everybody and their brother in the government was spending valuable money to put together RFPs to get pens. And that became crazy. Because what happens when every agency buys their own pens?
Everybody gets a different price.
I think so. So I met with the Office of Federal Procurement Policy Director, and she said she cannot get her head around how much the government is spending for anything. Because there's all these different procurements, all these different prices that even the same company has provided, much less different companies have provided. So you could be in Department of Justice paying $2.39 for this pen, and you could be in Navy NAVFAC and be paying 29 cents for this pen. And it could be from the same manufacturer, same exact pen. So that was dumb, right? The government wasn't acting, and I would submit they're still not acting, like the big kahuna that they are. Because if you're the big kahuna, you're all small business owners. What do you think your prices that you get from vendors are versus what Walmart gets from those same vendors? What's going on there?
Walmart will get a better price because of
Right.
quantity.
And Walmart can demand a better price because they can say to you, if you don't want to give me the 29 cents per pound that I'm asking for, step aside because the person behind you will give me the 29 cents that I'm asking for. That's what a big kahuna can do. Is the government a big kahuna? Does the government act like a big kahuna? Not so much. And the other thing that sort of plays into all this is the fact that, how many people have heard the term big data? Right, so when you go into, I have Bose headphones that I use when I exercise, and I lost one of the tips on it. And I was laying in bed thinking about how I'd lost this tip, couldn't find any place, and literally I went to Amazon, typed in, earbud replacements, and it showed me a list of them, and 2 clicks later, they're being delivered, they're on their way to my house. Notice how fast that was. It was very effortless on my part. There is nothing, let me repeat, there is nothing that in the government happens like that. And part of it is our fault. If the government has a system that works, do we want to pay more taxpayer dollars to redo that system and make it more efficient? Typically the answer is no. We don't want to pay more in taxes. So we don't fund the government to get those really cool systems like Amazon does. And what is Amazon? It's a for-profit company. And what is the government? They're mission focused. And so we as taxpayers say, as long as you're getting the mission accomplished, we don't care if you can do it in 2 clicks. So here's a great scenario. So I was teaching up in GSA in New York City. They put information into one system, and then they take the information and type it into another system because they have to do some functionality over here, and then they have to take the results of that and put it back into the first system. What problems do we see with this? Waste of time, the fact that error rates go up quite substantially, right? So that's the world the government's living in. So if the government could act like Amazon and be able to, do these two-click ordering or two-click getting reports or anything like that, they would, like, if the government had moved to big data, which is what all this is, how many people know the Target story? So Target hired some data analysts to come in and look at their purchasing, who's buying from Target. And one of the things these people realized was if you commit to Target when you have a baby, you're going to be a lifelong Target customer. And the reason why that happens is because if you're single, footloose and fancy-free, and you care about how much you're spending for things, you have time to sort of flit around and look at other places, and you can go online, and you could do this and you could do that. But as soon as you have a baby and you're sleep deprived, you basically want to go, they have found, you want to go to one place and just get everything. Like, I want to get my food, I want to get diapers, I want to be able to get everything I possibly, fix my car, the whole 9 yards, I want to get it all done. And they look, because they analyze big data, they know that trend. So they try to get you as soon as they can, but they're really trying to target you when you have a baby. So how do they do that? Obviously, we all know they collect data about us, right? Our credit card purchases, if you're a part of a loyalty program, all those things they've kept track of. And they have found that if you buy unscented lotion, vitamins, and cotton balls, those 3 things, you're probably pregnant. Like, there's a high probability that you're pregnant. And once they hone in on that, now they start bombarding you with marketing messages. Oh, you have a baby room you need to get established? Look, here are different paint colors. Have you thought about cribs? Have you thought about this, that, and the other thing? And they are so precise that they found this young woman and they targeted her for all this baby stuff. And the father was appalled and contacted Target and said, how dare you send all this stuff to my daughter? She's underage. And guess what surprise we had for Dad? He was going to be a granddaddy. So my point is, that's a very simplistic example that we, the public, knows about. But have you ever had like really odd scenarios where you're looking at something and all of a sudden in a totally different social media feed you're getting bombarded? That's what all that's about. The government doesn't really have that capability yet. I don't know what they have, like what the FBI has in the CIA, because obviously that's classified. And I'm sure there's a certain amount of that ability that exists within those agencies. But I'm talking about the day-to-day routine stuff. So getting back to your GWAC comment. You get really long answers. But the GWAC thing was designed to stop this crazy. So instead of having all these different procurements that are happening in each one of these areas, they said, GSA, you're responsible for putting government-wide access contracts in place. And the problem that was trying to prevent is when Navier did buy stuff for just themselves, if they bought pens just for themselves, nobody else in the government could buy these pens. So if they got the 38-cent rate for these pens, and NAVSUP needed them, they couldn't get them. Because this contract, the scope of this contract was just with NAVSEA in San Diego. And so when they came up with this whole GSA notion, the idea was, let's put contracts in place across the board that everybody in the government can use. Because what that prevents, first off, we try to get to this one system notion, and we stop all the crazy procurements by having just a procurement in place that everybody can use, and everybody gets the best prices. The reason why the government can get the best prices on GWAC schedules is, and so government-wide access contracts, GSA puts most of them in place. And and if you look at the GSA schedules, all of the GSA schedules are considered GWACs, government-wide access contracts. So whereas in the old days, each individual RFP had to have all the sections of the RFP, we'll talk about in a second, and they had to go through a procurement where it was released, the contractors had time to ask questions, and then the contractors had to put proposals together, and amendments were issued and all that other kind of stuff, and then source selection had to occur, and then an award was made, and then potentially a protest. All that processing time, all those process steps took time, and it cost money. So instead of every single agency doing that, you put one in place that contractors can bid on at any point in time. So today, you could sit down, go to the GSA website, find all the GSA schedules, and decide if your company has products or services that are within one of those. If they are, you could put together a proposal over the next couple of weeks and submit it to GSA, and then it could take a month or 3 years to negotiate with GSA based on their backlog right now. And then you would, once you had that, you would have a government-wide access contract that anybody could use. Now, the stipulation with GWACS and GSA is that just like Walmart can demand your best prices because they're going to buy so much from you, any of your companies that you give a big discount to because they buy a lot from you, those companies are called most favored customers. And whatever price you are giving those most favored customers, that's the price you have to put on your GWAC. So let me say that again. Whatever your most favored customer price is, you have to put that as your price that you sell to everybody in the government. So the government wants you to treat them as if they're your most favorite customer, even though they could buy 2 items, 2,000, 2 million from you. So remember one of the first comments I said, who are the laws written by? Government. Who are they interpreted by? Who enforces them? Right. So here's an example. So what I just told you, right? The government says you have to give me the most favored customer pricing. So now you have your GSA schedule, you are good to go. Now let's say Walmart comes to you and they say, you know, we've heard about your cleaning supplies, we really want to stock them, and if you sell them to us at a 30% discount, we're good to go. And your best discount up until this point was a 20% discount, and that's what you gave the government. Now Walmart comes along and says, I'm not even going to talk to you unless you give me a 30% discount. And you decide, oh my God, Walmart, that's global, that's huge, we need to do that. If you give Walmart the 30% discount, you have to go back into your GSA schedule and reduce your price and give the government a 30% discount. So if you give one of your commercial customers a better discount than you are giving the government, you have to go in and change your GSA schedule. If, however, your NAVFAC, who does facilities, they come to you and they say, we have a procurement, and you decide, well, wait a minute, naval facilities, that's like all the facilities of all Navy offices all around the world, that's a huge contract. I want to give them a 30% discount instead of the 20. Like, you're deciding to do that because you want to win this business. You don't have to change your GSA schedule. You could give NAVFAC 30%, and tomorrow you could give NAVSUP 20%, your same GSA schedule. In other words, if you give the government a better price than your most favored customer price, they're okay with that. And you're not required to change your prices, and you're not required to give it to other agencies. So that's sort of the nuance. Did that answer your question? So if you look at, in GSA, there's a FPDS, you'll see all the GSA schedule holders.
Could you say that again?
Sure. It's Federal Procurement Data System, FPDS. And you can do a search there for all GSA schedule holders. So you could, it has all the purchase data, and it's normally pretty current. I'm not sure how current it is today based on the shutdown stuff, but normally it stays pretty current. It's like a day or